So I'm thinking, I'm getting I'm getting a little bit of a Andy Warhol vibe. Is that what we're doing? Fucking love it, man. That's awesome. I don't hear you. Could be my fault.
No, no.
Okay,
I had the analog mic. No,
dude.
it definitely looks like Andy Warhol, although I was attempting to do Marshall Applewhite, the
Oh, dude. Oh, yeah. Oh my God. You got to make your eyes wider. It's just like as wide as you
I don't
can. Like
have it. I don't have what it takes.
he's like he's. Oh man, dude,
This
crazy.
wig is on backwards too. That's the best part.
I'll
Here.
I'll give you a I'll give you a little piece of trivia that I just found out. Oh, that's pretty slick.
Hey,
Totally different vibe.
hey, how you doing, huh?
How you doing? Hey, the fuck out of here.
Bangua,
Gabagool, gabagool.
huh? Did you notice the
Yeah, dude, that is so badass.
all right, I'm getting
We
rid
should
of it.
keep that up, man. That's
I guess we were going to get into there's been a lot of questions around cults and
hmm,
is non-duality a cult and are you a cult leader and all these kinds of things, and it just seems appropriate to just have that conversation openly about
mhm.
it, you know?
Yeah.
It's even kind of hard to answer that question directly too, because it's like, yeah, there of course there's elements of all of these things in experience, but really it comes down to identity itself and
Mhm.
like that piece. So the one thing that I tend to say, and I know you say it, is really it comes down to this direct experience. It doesn't matter what you've read or what the books are, unless it's being like engaged here, then you're deferring experience essentially, depending on
Yeah.
an object instead of, it's like the description of a strawberry versus the taking a bite of it.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
I think that kind of works itself out. Like I tell them, if there's something that isn't resonating, then it's probably not for you.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, the cult thing is interesting. I mean, it's cult's a strong word. It's like you could almost say like the extreme example, but there are a lot, and there are true cults right now. Like it's not, this isn't just the Moonies or like, you know, Jonestown. I mean, extreme cases. There are literally cults right now. You can watch, good Netflix documentaries if you want. And there was the one called Love Has Won about Mother God. That was a friggin' trip, like really wild. Um, there was a Nexium cult. There's all these true cults, right? Charismatic leader, manipulation. Ultimately, they're taking from the members. They're like using triangulation and manipulation tactics to keep them in fear so they don't leave. Filtering out people who will stand up against any kind of leadership structure. So they filter in the people who are willing to just follow and they test them and make sure that you're compliant. All those tactics and those really do sort of define a cult. And those classic cults are there. They're out there still. There's large ones and small ones. But there's also a lot of shades of cult-like behavior, or just let's say people getting taken advantage of in sort of spiritual circles. We don't even have to talk about like like traditional established religion, because that's a whole other story. And there's a whole bunch of that stuff in that manipulation tactics and all of it, right? Manipulating what you believe, and if you don't believe the right thing, then you get ostracized. And I mean, there's literally not doctrine necessarily, but like I don't know, bylaws in Christian culture that say that if you do this thing we don't want you to do or believe this thing, you're out of our religion, right? So there's very institutional and very well established and old systems like that. But we're talking a little bit more like contemporary spirituality and, like I guess we could say non-duality, we could say online dharma, we could say um, meditative based types of groups, and even contemporary versions of sort of ancient, things like Zen and different things, ashrams and all these that still function to various degrees, and there's abuse that goes on in them, and this is known, right? And so I guess as we were chatting, I don't actually remember what we were talking about specifically. I think we were joking about some Marshall Applewhite and some other weird stuff, but my instinct is to talk about it in a way that is pragmatic for people. They can get something out of it, learn
Yeah.
something about themselves. And if you see the red flags in yourself that you're really susceptible to this kind of thing, um, be careful, of course, practically speaking. And at the same time, there's something to investigate there. They're probably the same thing that would tend to put you towards sort of cult behavior mentality and getting sucked into that thing. And I've had people tell me that they know that about themselves actually.
Hmm.
That same part of yourself, the same fear or unmet need is probably the same thing that if you actually address it, it might actually more spontaneously move you to true awakening, toward true awakening, where and a lot of it has to do with approval. A lot of this has to do with how how fearful are you of not having it, how obsessed are you with approval, and how distorted is your perceptual filters around how approval functions. And a lot of this can be trauma related. So that's kind of where I would start is like, let's look at the psychological factors that go into it, and look at both in the actual in the teacher or the leader and also the person who's susceptible to those kinds of things. That's what makes sense to me because it's practical, it's accessible, and everyone can relate to some degree. I mean, there's no one that walks the face of the earth that can't relate to seeking validation in certain times in their life and being, manipulated for what they deeply desire, and so forth. So, like, we've all been in those situations, and they're relatable.
No doubt about it. Yeah, and I think adding that just that small piece about even for those who are in a coaching or some sort of appearing leadership role, I think it's useful to talk about that too, because you put it really well in the book. That chapter that you wrote in the book about finding a teacher and all those aspects, that piece right there is one of the most unique things in any book I've ever read because it cuts to the core of, hey, there are people out there that don't even realize they're taking advantage of other people. So, we must remain aware. We must remain vigilant. And I think it's pretty useful right there even. Um
Yeah,
so
yeah.
even
Go ahead.
just have it's not really a checks and balances, but it kind of is just just pay attention, things to look for. Like, here's a good one: you might be in a cult if you are feeling compelled to give away all your money and belongings to the leader of that particular organization.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things.
Yeah, yeah, and that's in the that's the more extreme end, and on the more subtle but pervasive end that also you find in sort of non-cult but dysfunctional hierarchy leadership situations, whether it's any kind of group really, would be a common one would be like if you feel that in the group you're in, if you feel hesitant to say what you actually believe about anything, especially what's going on in the group, then there's manipulation tactics going on. If you actually feel scared or hesitant because you've seen examples of people getting ostracized, abused, talked about behind their back because they say something that's not in alignment with that group's message, to me, that's always dysfunctional. 100% of the time, that's dysfunctional.
No doubt, because I mean it's basically an environment that's more fear oriented, of course, in
Mhm.
that regard. Like, there's going to be reprisal.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even in a job, like if you're in a job and you're scared to like speak your mind about, you know, you always have to check in with yourself too. You could just be really opinionated and the kind of person who just likes to always stir the pot to give themselves something to do. Like we've all met that person too. But generally speaking, like if you feel like it's not okay just to speak your mind about something that is truly important to you, or a view, or you just feel like in this group of people, there's a rigid set of views, and it's not okay to like question that.
Mm,
There's some manipulation going on. I don't care how established or how old that group or religion is. There's manipulation tactics going on, of
yeah.
course.
And
Yeah,
it actually, at that point, doesn't even matter if it's intentional or not.
right. Yeah, absolutely. And it becomes like a largely unintentional collective delusion is what it becomes. Everybody's doing it. Did you see the mother God one, the love has won?
You brought that one up. I haven't seen it, but you said it was
Okay.
really, really interesting. And they
It
basically
is.
they start taking on a theme. It's almost like running the police force in the ghettos in Germany. There is like this, or this Stanford prison experiment. People are
Mhm.
taking on these roles and they don't even realize that that's what's happening.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, exactly. I actually saw the documentary for that the other night too. The Stanford prison experiment was really good. I knew about it because I'd heard about it in psychology classes and so forth, but to see them act it out and try to be really true to to what they recorded was really good. It was interesting to see. And yeah, but the thing I was going to say about the Mother God cult was at first you're like, this leader who's calling herself Mother God is like so deluded, like obviously, but and you kind of feel sorry for the people who are following her. But by the end, I actually felt sorry for her. You'd have to understand how the story unfolded. I felt a little sorry for her because they were reinforcing the delusion she started, that they collectively reinforced, and she was suffering from it by the end. Like she's dying actually. And but they're the ones that are like almost propagating the whole thing by that point, because I guess it's almost like once you've gone this far down the road, even though you see the detrimental effects, all you can either go more unconscious, or you can wake up and realize like you're in massive amounts of delusion, and there's going to be a lot of shit to feel, like shame and guilt and resentment and all the fear of leaving this delusion. And that's where they were just in this funnel of fear and delusion, and
Oof.
everybody was going down the tubes with it at the same time. It wasn't even that big of a group, but it was really wild. So yeah.
Collective reinforced confirmation bias. Yeah.
Hmm.
Brutal.
Yeah. It's hypnotic. Hypnotic. Well, that's what the Stanford prison experiment proved, and also the older one from the 50s where they're turning the knob up, shocking people because
Yeah.
they've given permission to do it,
Mm.
and as long as they had permission, they would do it, and
What was it? They said there was a level that they told them this will kill the other person, and they were still
mhm.
crossing that threshold.
Yeah. And the people in the other room are literally screaming, stop, stop, I'm in pain, it hurts, I'm gonna die.
Great.
And they would just do it as long as the permission was there, or not just permission, but like someone saying, go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
Are you sure I won't get in trouble? You won't get in trouble. Go ahead
Yeah.
and do it. It's like,
So I'm doing what I'm told. Okay.
yeah. Yeah. So yeah, there's a very, so this is really interesting. And there's probably people watching this who are like, "Oh, I wouldn't get in a cult." And I'll be like honest with everybody. I remember I was always interested in this kind of stuff. And when I was much younger, I remember seeing cult documentaries, and there'd be people in there who said, I got into a cult. And they'd look at the camera and say, you probably think you couldn't get into a cult, but anyone could get sucked into a cult. And I remember going, no fucking way. Like, there's no way I would get into a cult. Like, I just know, like, maybe I'm just too independent minded and I'm too freaking rebellious. But I was pretty sure then, and I'm still pretty sure now I probably couldn't. But what I have learned is I can be deceived for sure. I can be deceived, and I can be slow played into situations that surprise me. And I'm like, wait a minute, how'd this happen? Um, so subtler versions of that. So we're all truly susceptible, even people who are really independent minded and strong willed, like like I always was. We're all susceptible, but even more than that, what I want to say to anyone who's listening who thinks this may not apply to them is, what's so interesting is the same exact thing that compels us to compel some people to do anything, to give away everything, to get a little bit of validation from that cult leader, from that teacher, from the inner circle. They'll make terrible choices for themselves to get just a little bit more of that validation, because what it does is they start with love bombing and you get a lot of positive validation. Then the fear comes in and triangulation, and you're afraid not to do what they say. So they kind of slow play you into this, like from love to fear. But yeah, that fear of not having the validation, the fear of being ostracized, that exact thing that we all actually have to one degree or another is actually what I see as a, probably, if I were to take a group of people who wake up pretty easily, and a group of people who probably have more trouble with it, they still wake up, but they do it slower, they struggle with it more, they negotiate with it more. It's actually that. It's how much are you trying to fit in, maybe with a different group or something. I've had people who are very sincere, willing to work hard, willing to sit hard, willing to do retreats, willing to really work at it. And I really think they're sincere about awakening, but they're in a group of people who have a certain Buddhist name or a certain spiritual thing. And the more I talk to them, the more I realize that it's kind of culty, actually. They're discouraged from even talking to me or going outside of that group for anything. And I what's interesting is I really try not to directly say that to them. I let them figure it out as they talk about it. And it's just interesting to watch it dawn on their face as they realize, like, oh my God, like that's really manipulative, like I'm being manipulated. And to see that recognition is really helpful, I think, for them. At the same time, when I see them really start to shift is when they go, something in them goes, fuck it, I don't care, I'll disappoint these people because I know it's bullshit now. And when you're willing to, like, go off the map that says, here's what you should be and how you should be. And it may not be a group or a cult. It may be your dad. It may be your mother. It may be one person that molded your psyche such that you're terrified of doing what you're not supposed to do, looking where you're not supposed to look, questioning the belief you're not supposed to question. When you really finally do that, when you open the door that the monster's in, when you go into that cave that Luke Skywalker had to go into, thinking he wasn't going to be afraid, and Yoda said, "Oh, you will be." That when you do that, that's when you start waking up. And I really think that there's a social pressure aspect to this that gets internalized. You know, so yeah,
That power of the conformity survival mechanism, it can be really strong. I think just this is a general kind of rule of thumb. If the group that you're in, if there's a no or a limitation on what you're supposed to do and what you're not supposed to do, if that's infringing on something that is just fundamental of like free will kind of stuff, there you go. Like you
yeah,
can't talk to anyone else. That right there, that makes no sense at all. That
yeah.
is what we want to pay attention to.
Hmm. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can talk about the sort of classical science too of the cult tactics, like love bombing is one. You meet a group of people, and all of a sudden, everyone there is giving you all the validation you've never had and always wanted, and it feels really, really good, like massive dopamine release. It's probably dysfunctional, if not a cult. It's possible. It's possible you could just meet a really, really kind group of people, but they're probably not going to be overtly demonstratively affectionate. Rather, you'll just feel some true kindness and someone really paying attention to you and
Definitely.
genuine concern instead of like, oh, I love you and hugging and, all just too much of that stuff from a
Yeah.
lot of people in a group. There's something wrong going on there.
It's the demonstration of something instead of the authentic energetics of that, which I
Yeah.
know can be difficult to detect. But if it feels too good to be true in some regard, just pay attention to that particular intuition that's talking to you.
Yeah. Yeah. So another way of saying this that I like to say sometimes is, or I've just noticed is like, if someone has to tell you something about themselves without you even asking and there's no context for it, it's not like a job interview. You really got to ask yourself, why are they telling me this? So if someone says, it says like, I'm a really honest person, like out of the blue, it's like, what? Like I would really not trust that person
You're telling on
genuinely.
yourself. You
Yeah.
know, it's
Yeah.
like what you
Why
said
would you
earlier.
have to tell me that?
You're protesting too much.
Yeah. Or I'm sure you know this one. When anytime someone goes, I'm not racist or anything, but the next thing that comes out of their mouth is
It's
always racist.
it's a
It's
hundred
just like
percent guaranteed.
100% chance. Yeah. So yeah, so it's like if someone has to tell you something about themselves or sort of very obviously demonstrate it, you got to go, well, why are they doing that? Like it's manipulative and
Yeah.
generally.
Another thing to pay attention to is if there's information or communication that is external that's definitely making you feel worse, like it's about you, you're being singled out in some way, you're feeling
Yeah.
like being shrunken or torn apart in that way. This is all an internal experience here. If you
Mhm.
feel like crap, that's only coming from within. That's the thing. But if it's being kind of pressed in from the outside, pay attention to that.
Yep. Absolutely.
We're really kind of getting into the fundamentals of abuse. I mean, this shows up in relationships as well,
Hmm.
romantic relationships,
Yeah.
all the same.
Yeah. So this also should what you just said shows up definitely in certain settings that are more like satsang, non-dual, contemporary spirituality with small groups, less traditionally established things. And because I've seen it, I've heard. Well, I haven't actually directly witnessed it that I can think of. Maybe I have, but I know a lot of people who've experienced it, where they're like, a certain person, they'll come to me and they'll be like, this teacher, like, they seem really nice on the outside, but in their group, they yell at people. They yell at people and they can't be questioned. And then I'll hear it from two or three people. Then I'm like, okay, I try not to make up my own mind. I try not to make up my mind based on what one person says about one person. But when you hear like a bunch of people come to you about the same person, and you're like, okay, well, yeah,
Yeah.
those are pretty consistent concerns, and that's pretty garden variety abuse is like,
Yeah.
yelling at someone and then telling them it's for their own good kind of thing.
Makes
Like,
no
oh,
sense.
you needed me to destabilize you so you could, it's like,
Yeah, I hit you because you make me, is what they're saying.
yeah, right, exactly. It's just a spiritualized abuse kind of
That's
thing.
abuse.
So
That's
yeah,
abuse. It
yeah,
doesn't make sense for, I mean, the yelling part, it's entirely unnecessary.
mhm, yeah,
You know, like the closest audio Shanti ever got really is that quote where he talks about like if you don't like if you came here for the smoke, or I don't remember exactly how
yeah,
it goes. You've posted it a few times, you know,
yeah,
but that's a significant different energy than like yelling at someone and singling them
yeah,
out, you know.
yeah. Yeah, and Adyashanti, I've heard him a few times say something like what Josh is talking about is he said he had this beautiful poem. I read it at the most recent retreat at Art of Living,
Oh,
and he's
okay.
kind of like, I'm ready to burn this house down. He's like, if you're here for smoke and you don't want the fire, he's like, don't come up, don't come talk to me on stage right now. It was something like that. He wasn't like picking on anyone individually. He was just saying like the circumstances right now, the conditions right now are like a scalpel. Like, are you ready to really have your delusion pulled away? Because that's what we're doing here.
Yeah.
And it's really powerful. It's kind of directed, has that direct feeling to it. I've heard him talk like that a few times, but it was funny. One time it was at a retreat and he kind of said something on stage before the Q&A started. And it was like, like, don't come up here and mess around. And he was really nice about it. He's like, don't diddle daddle and talk about this in your story. He's like, you have a question, bring the question, like
Yeah.
sit with it and then come up and let's talk about what's real. And he's but I noticed like he's like, and I think he said, and if you're talking for like 2 or 3 minutes just going on and on, I'll remind you, right? And I was like, ooh, he's serious. But then I noticed every single person that went up, he's so sweet, he's so like unassuming, and you know what I mean, like he was just trying to put on that framework to start the group because he has 400 people with questions and didn't want people like blundering on and on and on and on and on. So, but what I noticed is like, yeah, in person, he's so soft and really sweet. But yeah, if someone's yelling at one person and, certainly ridiculing them or making fun of them and telling them it's good for ego attrition, like, I know that sounds terrible. People do that shit. They justify abuse by saying it's good for your ego to, like, whatever. You can imagine how off that can be. So, yeah.
And really who benefits in that? It's just it's a clearly identified selfish action, that kind of
Mhm.
behavior.
Yeah. Yep. If you feel, and this is maybe a little more, this might require a little more of like an attuned intuition and sense with people, but it's an important one. And I think it's like, if you sense that that teacher wants something from you, if you just sense it in the interaction, in this case, and where we're talking about awakening, to me something's a little off because they're not going to transmit clearly. The transmission won't be clear. It'll feel one way. It'll feel like there's a need that they're not really fully sharing with you. Then you're not going to fully share with them, and there's going to be a barrier there. And they may have a serious agenda that they
But
could be
that's the essence of
out to rip you off.
that's the essence of manipulation right there.
Yeah, yeah,
This has to
yeah,
be a give. It has to be entirely a give, neutral as neutral can be. Of course,
yeah,
I want something from you. That's a good one too, for sure.
yeah.
Or
Pe-
if you find yourself with someone that you feel absolutely like you have to displace, even if it doesn't seem to be coming from them, for your own benefit, it might be a good idea to seek another venue. If you feel
Yeah.
like you have this overwhelming desire to displace for them and to put them on a giant pedestal, even that by itself is something to pay attention to.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, you might just be buying into the whole package without realizing like how many other people there are doing it, and it's another sort of sign you sometimes see in these settings. I will say the teacher may not actually be encouraging it, but you will see people sort of competing a little bit with like how well they know the teacher, and oh, I had a private audience with the teacher and this and that, and that goes back to like Indian guru worship. Not that all Indian gurus are dysfunctional or frauds, but there are plenty that are, and anyone who grew up in India knows that. But there's a system of guru worship where it's like you learn to worship the deity through the guru, and you can see how dysfunctional that can get and how much advantage people can be taken of using that sort of model.
Mm.
um and and they display an air of specialness. You should not display an air of specialness. You just shouldn't. It doesn't. What I mean by shouldn't is if you're talking about what we're talking about, the simple possibility of someone introspecting in a way that can see through the delusion of thought, essentially, to put it in a simple way. That's not about me. That's just me going, hey, have you looked here? Have you looked there? There's nothing. I'm not going, oh, I'm enlightened. It's nothing like that. If I'm coming off as enlightened, as a persona of enlightenment somehow, then that's, again, there's something off there. I may be completely unconscious to it, but it's something I'm actually doing, something I'm adding to the interaction that's not natural.
Yeah, it lacks authenticity.
Yeah.
Because it literally flies in face of the message that's clear that everyone has this, no one is
Mm.
special, and that's really obvious.
Mm.
And so if there is any of that, and also pay attention to the words. If you hear somebody proclaiming enlightenment or that they have something that you don't all the time, there you go. Pay attention to
Mm,
that.
mm. Yeah.
That's like
There's
a
a really, go ahead.
hierarchy attempted, like a forced hierarchy, you know?
Yeah. 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 I don't like the hierarchies that we see in these groups either sometimes. And again, a lot of times it's innocent. It's just more of the audience doing it. Seen it in like different groups I've been to, like satsangs and different retreats. Um, but there's some of it's going to happen. I really try to deconstruct it. Like I actively like when I do retreats, you know, I try to go down into the audience and meet people before they start. I go sit in the audience with people. I just sit on the silent rounds. I try to like just show that I'm not this special guy who magically shows up after the bell rings and you can't get out of your chair and they sneak up to the stage and walk all peacefully and then they disappear back into the void again and you never see them outside of the thing and there's no way you're ever going to talk to them in this week, you know. Like I really try to avoid that because it really starts to look like that. And I kind of understand why when you have 300 people, you can get swamped with people and stuff. So crowd control and all that stuff comes into play. But it's still ways to manage that where you're not like kind of hiding from everyone, and it can kind of make you look like you're on a pedestal. Totally, unfortunately, and um, that's the last thing I want because it's not about me. It's not about Josh. It's about anyone who's listening to this who's suffering and how to address it. That's what it's about. There was a great story. My Zen teacher, his teacher was Philip Kapleau Roshi from Three Pillars of Zen fame, American Zen Buddhist, who wrote the Three Pillars of Zen. He started the Zen Center in Rochester and has a big lineage and stuff. But I really love this guy, and yeah, I mean the book is what triggered my first awakening actually. But my teacher told stories about him. Who was his teacher, and he said, Kapleau Roshi's favorite story of all times was this. He said there was one night the Zen Center was like closed basically, and but they had forgot to lock the door, and some dude was walking by and he saw it, and so he went in and he's like hello, and it's like dark, and he said there was someone like kind of shuffling around papers, and he said, oh hi, how do I get information? And the guy gave him some information. He's like, oh, we're closed, but here's some of this, and there's a schedule, you can come back and here's a calendar. And he left, and I guess the guy came back like a month later, and then he did an intro course and met some people, and then later on he met Roshi, Kapleau Roshi, who's like the Zen master of the place. And he was like dumbfounded because he said, oh, that was you that was there that night? He goes, I thought you were the janitor. And Kapleau Roshi loved it. It was like his favorite story. He thought, yes, like I finally did it. Finally made it. I made it back to zero, you know? Pretty cool. Yeah.
That's perfect. You brought this up in the past. This really is about the normalization of this to kind of create it as like a special experience and all that. It really is a massive disservice.
Mhm.
It's also completely inauthentic,
Yeah. And inaccurate.
but it's just not the way it is, you know?
And actually, practically speaking, I'm pretty convinced at this point, just having a lot of experience now, watching people wake up. I actually think it really does slow the process down for some people. It probably also self-selects certain people who are like trying to use that guru distant construct to kind of stay asleep a little bit. But it really puts it on the back burner when it's like, oh, that's the enlightened guy up there on the stage. I'm not. We're not. But maybe if we're really close, like maybe we'll get a little something from him. You know, oh, I had this experience. I think he gave me this. Like people say stuff like that. Like I think he gifted me this like bliss moment or something. And oh, you got that? Maybe wonder if he'll ever give it to me. I got to get a private audience with him. Like I've met people who talk about teachers this way. And yeah, that's so misleading because it's actually so available.
Yeah.
In fact, you could almost say it's the most available thing there is.
I mean, where is it not? Which is actually a great game to play, by the way. Anyone out there?
Yeah.
Just keep asking, is it not here? Oh,
Yeah.
damn. Is it here? Oh,
Yeah.
oh, oh, oh.
Yeah. Exactly. Right.
That's really the cosmic joke right there. Oh, oh. It's really obvious. Yeah.
Yeah. Laughably so.
The susceptibility, I think, comes down to the pieces of the wounded whatever might just be fixated on. That's codependent for sure. Displaced. Somebody has something I don't have. Even in this environment, working with Angelo or myself or anyone, If there's ever a feeling that they have something that you don't have, pay attention to that, because that's really never the message here.
Yeah. Yeah. And we say it again and again in different ways. And I know the perception of like looking at me going, you must have something I have. I can't wait till I get it. It's just so back-ass words. The truth of it is all you have is the belief you don't have something, and you're really not wanting to let go of that. I don't have that necessarily. So there's something you have that I don't actually. That's what's really happening in that moment, if anything's happening,
And there's something
which is
happening with
really
that
funny.
belief that's like there's a payoff there, which is important to pay attention. Like there's like some strange satisfaction in that, which is really
Yeah.
strange too.
Yeah.
Like it something that's become clear here is that certain patterns for people, it's like when you have an itch, the story is, oh, I have to scratch the itch. And what we're literally doing is overlaying that sensation with another sensation. We're literally covering the initial
Mm.
sensation. And so that's what we call satisfaction. And so these patterns, like it has to reach this experience that I'm so familiar with, that I know, that I call satisfaction.
Mm.
Ah, there it is.
Yeah.
It's not about that type of outcome. What's it like without the satisfaction, without the
Mm.
completion of that particular experience? In other words, next time you have an itch, don't scratch it.
Mm.
That's actually one
Yeah.
of the most like viscerally intense, interesting, sensational experiences ever.
Yeah. It is. I had it the first time I meditated. I sat at a Zen center where it's like, sit 30 minutes, can't move, sit another 30 minutes, can't move. And it was summer, it was hot, and I was getting itchy. My face was itchy, itched so bad. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe how hard I want to itch this. It was crazy. And I sat after I sat there for a while, it just kind of went away. It was like, oh, it was the next step is like, oh, it can be itchy without like this intense urge. It's just itchy. And then the next step is like then the itchy just kind of fades too. Comes and goes a little bit. Not a problem. But yeah, yeah. Covering something up with something else. And we often are oriented to, so yeah, we want the payoff. We want the payoff in a sense. And in one sense, I can't say there's not. There is a sort of payoff in one sense. But the payoff we're looking for is a payoff through avoidance.
It's
That's the challenge for a long time.
it's an anti-payoff.
Yeah, exactly. We're trying to avoid. We think the payoff is going to be we can successfully avoid. But what happens is we actually get worse at avoiding than you can avoid, and then you're in like existential hell, and then that's the payoff. When
That's
you
the
realize what, yeah.
that's one of the toughest pointings that show up is when people are like in the midst of something really intense, and I just honesty has to come out, and I'm like, this is exactly where you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
No
Yeah.
matter what your mind is saying, this is exactly what you've been asking for right here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Carpe moment,
Yes.
carpe the moment, be in it.
But we can get so much dynamism with like, I don't know, fixing, like repairing, fixing, managing everything. It's like there's a way to stop doing that by just seeing like nothing needs management, nothing needs fixing at all.
That's
Period.
such a primary belief that there's a problem, that problems
Mm.
always exist, and that means there has to be a solution. What most people don't recognize is the solution is a problem. It's
Mm.
always a problem. If there is ever a problem, there's always a problem.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
and eventually that starts turning inward. This feeling, this sensation, this is a problem. It needs to be fixed. So I'm going to
Mm.
get really busy. I'm going to get really busy. I'm going to go shopping. I'm going to get a dopamine fix. And we get like, I really think the biochemical framework, it can be a useful, at least as a metaphor for this as well. A lot of people are addicted to the dopamine trap, and that's a thought oriented space.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yes.
what about the stuff that's going on in the gut? We know 98% of the serotonin is made here, right here in the gut. Maybe we don't have to
Mm.
interfere. Just be with that.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Oxytocin, serotonin, it's the feeling of the connection and just a general sense of well-being. Just
Mm.
get out of the way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I know this is confusing for some people. I just remind them that every feeling that you feel is the feeling of well-being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What else could it be?
Yeah. Yeah. Presence too. It's like sometimes when someone's feeling something really seemingly challenging, it's like something maybe they just haven't addressed or touched into. It's been repressed through habit, not through any intention really.
Totally.
And all of a sudden it's here, and there's just the habit of going, no, 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 I can't handle this, I can't handle it. Sometimes I'll say, you know presence, you know what presence is. This is just another texture of presence. Presence first shows you, it says, here I am, and it feels so good when you first drink that water that you haven't drunk in the desert, right? But what presence does is a beautiful gift. It starts going, look, I'm here too. Do you see how I'm here as well? Like, it shows you like all the different textures of presence, and it can take all kinds of, it can take infinite textures. And the only divergence is between what we consider an identity that tries to mitigate that infinity and just infinity itself. Because the identity will always experience itself as finite. And so it's always trying to, put its finger in the dike, or stop this or push that, or pull this towards me and push that away. And it's just exhausts itself at some point. It's like, yeah.
So sometimes that's a pointer too. Sometimes you have to exhaust all options. Go for it.
Yeah. I've told that to people on occasion when I not commonly, but occasionally someone will come to me and they've been working at it and they're frustrated, but they're kind of like really cognitively dissonant. Like, I can feel they're just struggling with themselves about what they want to do, where they want to put their energy, and they want to wake up, but they're just like frustrated with it. But they kind of don't want to they just don't really want to look somewhere, and they know it, and they say it. And I'm like, go back and suffer a little more. Like, go back into your life and try to make it work again. Like, really, you just need a little more suffering, I think, and then you'll be pushing yourself over the edge.
There's no doubt about it. You know what? It's like this. It's like this dichotomy that forms with withdrawing from something, withdrawing from experiences, and engagement. And really, so there's a particular woman I work with, and she had been offered a job at random. She didn't have to work, but she was also in this place where the rumination just, it couldn't stop. And it was just like, take the job, take it, immerse, because she was building herself an escape route for every possible scenario. And now all the text messages is like, I don't understand how or why, but like the awakening is showing up at work. And I'm like, of
Mhm.
course, where is it
Yeah.
not? And now you're engaged in a way where you can't be withdrawn. So it's
Mhm.
basically the same pointing. You thrust yourself in a potentially suffering oriented experience, and that's where you started to find the gold.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's important, I think, and it's an important life lesson. It's important in the conventional sort of like success mentality of focus and effort and so forth. But it also comes into play here, where it's like, life is the teacher. Life is brilliant beyond your conception of brilliant. It's intelligent beyond the human dimension of intelligence, but you got to trust it. You got to lean in sometimes, and trust leaning in, and get out of your head, and the whole analysis paralysis thing. It's a very real deal. Lean in, and awakening doesn't happen when you're often, yeah. What is that?
I tell people, carry one of these, and if they are prone to hesitation,
Uh-huh.
carry one of these in your pocket and just do what the coin says.
Oh, okay.
If
Nice.
you're faced with the dilemma and
Yeah.
it really appears 50-50, then just move. Flip
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah. I used to say, this was after awakening for me, and like there was so much like stuff I was working through and stuff, but I would just sort of say out loud, like, pick something up and do something with it, and
That's
then
it.
pick something else up and do something with it,
Engage.
and
Engage.
just the movement, engagement in life starts to have a feel to it, a cadence, and you find it again, like again and again. And awakening does. That's a really good point. Awakening can happen in deep samadhi. It can happen during meditation or during sleep. You wake up, whatever can happen, but it often happens in very mundane situations, physical situations, busy situations, situations where you're thinking they're heady, your mind's going crazy, like confusing, disorienting. The last place you'd ever think to wake up, they often happen there. You cannot predict when it's going to happen. So trying to cultivate conditions to be all peaceful and relaxed and stuff for you, that's not helpful for awakening specifically.
And usually it's there's something hidden there saying withdraw, 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 and that's another piece of avoidance.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
Stillness is a dynamic experience. It's an awareness. It's not literally physically still necessarily. That's part
I
of it.
agree.
But
Yeah.
it moves us too.
Mhm.
It's a current.
Mhm.
That's a good word,
Yeah,
by the way.
yeah, it is everything you just said. I might say it's like the unbinding that never ends. And it's not an unbinding you do, it's an unbinding that you willingly participate in. You let it take you by the hand and show you how life works. It's
That's it.
like,
That's it.
yeah.
It's a Zen
Yeah.
slap without a hand.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah.
without a face.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
doesn't it have that quality of suddenness too? And it seems like the
Mhm.
suddenness happens when when we're really engaged with existence.
Mhm.
That's that spontaneity of awakening. I mean,
Mhm.
before I had met you, I had already exhausted. That was the benefit, is I had exhausted all options. I had reached absolute nihilistic apathy. That's what it
Mhm.
was like. And that all that it left was the possibility of something opening, an openness. And
Mhm.
just sitting in your home having that gentle, really connected conversation and moving down into that zendo, the space, the environment was created for openness, and it just boom, it just there was no stopping it. It was like
Mhm.
it's so strange. For the first time in my life, I was feeling something, and I didn't want to feel anything else.
Mhm. Yes. Yep. Yep. That's right. That's exactly how it was for me. Something came online that was like, what is it? It was a feeling, but it was way more than a feeling.
Yeah,
It
I mean,
was
it was yeah,
phenomenal, but it was also totally natural. And I was like, this.
this
This is this. Yeah, this is it's like, almost like this is what I've been looking for without knowing I was looking for anything.
right.
It's just this. And this is here's the important point. It was this is getting my attention. I will die before I fucking distract myself from this now because I finally got something real. I finally taste something real. I don't know anything about it. I don't have to know anything about it. I know it's
That
real.
was
It's real.
that was a huge gift too. You know, there was this hunger for always being the smartest human being in the room, no matter what. Just had to dominate in intelligence. And after meeting you and having that explosion, eruption of experience, only thing that had come up in terms of a verbal insight was I don't know and I don't need to know. I don't know and I don't want to study this. I don't want to find anything. I just want to be in it. And
Mm,
that oof, powerful guide. Just
mm,
it was the loudest sound in the room,
yeah.
the only sound.
Yeah. Yeah. Only sound in the universe.
Yeah,
Only
nothing.
sound when there's no universe.
It was the ins and the outs.
Yeah. Yeah. Front without a back.
I mean, it was really the first direct experience of paradox that, and even that cheapens it. It's really hard to even talk about. um,
Hmm.
yeah, I don't even know how
Mm.
to construct anything that would make sense out of that. But you definitely know. There's no question about that. When people go, well, how do I know? Or how do I know when I'm done? I'm like, wait, you don't even need to worry about that. It'll just be
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
don't even, there's no measuring stick or anything. Just,
Yeah. It's like the saying, I'm sure I've said this to you. It's this process is kind of like having sex with a 600-pound gorilla. It's not over till the gorilla's done.
that goes into that, like, when it comes to human beings, it's all about holes and ways to fill those holes.
People try to fill their holes with all kinds of things.
It's all about the holes and the things that go in the holes.
Yeah. Well, they try to fill them. They try to fill their holes with other people. They try to fill their holes with food. Strangely, right? I mean,
It sounds
and
like a
it's like you can
virgins.
never put enough in your hole. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
and that experience of the cosmic choke too was like just the recognition, like all of the effort and struggle became just absurd instantaneously, and it
Yeah.
was
Yep.
hilarious. It was like,
Yeah.
What?" I mean, it really is like reflecting on a dream that you're like, oh yeah, I remember I was like hopping around, and then that squash came out of my chest. Like it's absurd, it's all
Yeah.
absurd.
If I were to say what that means to someone who hasn't quite maybe had the experience in the relative yet, I would say it like this. It's like when I say you can't be ready for this, you can't prepare for this, you can't know what it is ahead of time. It's almost like what I'm trying to say is like um you, it's as bizarre as if I said everything you think you care about right now, everything in life that you think is so like all of the most important stuff to you, all of it, all of the way you're oriented to it, all of it, I can just snap my fingers, and all of a sudden you realize you don't care about it at all. It's that radical. It's like, what? Wait, what? And it's so light all of a sudden. Fuck. Everything just happens by itself. Like, there's nothing to say. It's like over.
Nothing to
Spirituality gone. Doesn't make sense. What the fuck is spirituality? Doesn't
it,
make any sense.
that's
It's
silly.
just like nothing.
It's
Yeah.
silly. What
Words.
is there to get? Get what?
Yeah.
Get what compared to what?
Yeah.
Like, but there's a contrast,
Yeah.
and that's a pretty unclear. It's like being smeared across the universe, and even that is too
Yeah.
limiting. Too limiting of
Yeah.
a to put it.
There were a few like strange phrases that would just come to my mind so saliently from like old songs and shit that I didn't really get before, but all of a sudden it made sense. One was from the Stairway to Heaven, where it says the forest will echo with laughter. That
Mhm.
is just like, oh my God, yes. Like there's no one laughing, and it's just laughter. Or there's a phrase somewhere in the Bible that says, "Have you suffered so many things in vain?" It's like, oh my God, suffering is totally unnecessary. I was making myself suffer because I thought I had to, you know?
Well, it's part of the conformity.
Hmm. Yeah.
There's so many
Yeah.
outside factors, and that's the displacement that's being pointed to here. Is it's not out here, none of
Mhm.
it. Yet there might be experiences out here that kind of are reflective, but just keep it's right here,
Mhm.
so close. It's so close you couldn't possibly see it if you looked for it, but it's
Mhm.
here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know why I'm saying it this way, but it just hit me this way. Be, um, be alert to the sound of your own voice in your own head. When your own voice is saying, "Oh, this could kill me," like, "Oh, this is going to destroy me," like, "I cannot handle this." It's just a voice in your head. It's like
Right.
if you had a diagnosis of schizophrenia, you would realize that's a voice. But if you don't, then all of a sudden it's like your voice. Like you actually believe you're talking to yourself, you know. It's a thought. You know, when you really start feeling when you're nose to nose with what we're talking about here, you feel it. And until it's really embodied in that second, in that less than a second, you may have a very strong fear response even because something is just like it knows it's ready to let go. But it's okay. That just feel it. Like just let your body feel that
Go to that.
and don't
What is
worry about the thoughts.
can you
Yeah.
find the fear in that experience of fear? Like, are there little pieces of fear? Is there anything
Mm.
actually solid in that experience?
Yeah.
Truly, like,
Yeah.
get curious about everything in that way. That's it.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's a journey inward, truly a journey inward. It's a journey of direct experience. It's a journey of sensation, you know? Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
I think you might have pointed this out at one point, and it was brilliantly simultaneous. There's like another sense that we can't classify. We can't say it's body or even thought.
Yeah.
You're experiencing it right now. Every single human
Hmm.
absolutely immersed in that. Just
Yeah.
just get a little more quiet. Just see if you can just perceive. It might be subtle at first, but you feel it. It's there. You
Hmm.
sense it. Hard to
Hmm.
describe. Can't be
Yeah.
classified. It's not like a buzz even. It's hard. It's just this is what we're kind of pointing to.
Yeah. And it's not, and importantly, it's not apart from any of those other textures.
Right.
So you don't find it in opposition to sound and sensation. It's
Yeah.
just not limited by that. It's not, that's not its defining characteristic.
It tends to be you like ubiquitous is the only thing that comes up. It is
Mhm.
the everythingness.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's the
Yeah.
blending. And that's a fun one too. You know? Play with sensation. Do you
Mm.
does the high frequency sensation that you feel here is that have a color? Does that
Mm.
does that taste like lemons? Does that have a high pitched sound to it?
Mhm.
It's really like that. They just start doing
Mhm.
this. It's
Yeah.
wild. It's
Mhm.
wild. Wait,
Yeah.
it's all the same. Like the visual field is the sound field. Like I'm seeing we are seeing what's being heard.
Mm.
What's seen is heard, is felt, is tasted, is touched. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I think in Dzogchen there's a term. I think it's Dzogchen. They call it one taste. There's like a term for it, but very much like that. Um, and once you taste it, it's like, oh man, uh, you can take up the challenge for the rest of your life of tasting it in everything all the time. the challenge of just finding it again and again, dying into it again and again.
And
It's just like, oh, it's here too. Like, wow, it's in the middle of an emotion that I've been avoiding for years, jealousy. It's in the middle of shame. Whoa. Like, wow, where else can you take me? Take me. I want to go, like, let's go. Um, mm,
and some of you that are listening might take it on as a game. That can be playful and light. Is it here?
mhm.
Is it here? Is it here? But the challenge part too. If you're more prone to the challenge, okay. What's the
Yeah.
difference really? What's the difference?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
contrast is gone.
Yeah. And even to say it's like a game or it's a challenge, it can certainly be dualistic. It's just what else would you do? It's so
Right.
fascinating. It becomes really like pure fascination, pure enjoyment, pure engulfment. Um, it's like the more that's penetrated, the more empty it gets, and then the more luminous it is, and the more it's penetrated, and the more empty it gets, and the more luminous it is. It's beautiful. Integration, disintegration, and perfect harmony all over at every level, subtle, gross, invisible, visible. Yeah.
We stop having any reference for macro micro because it's
Hmm.
all the same. Um,
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
of course, time collapses in that immersion because
Hmm.
there's no that. It's this. It's only this. What else is there? And
Yeah.
when people ask, how do I accept? I just remind them it's not even up to you because accept it or not, here you go. Like
Yeah.
it's just
Just
this.
see. Yeah.
It's just this. You don't even have to
Mhm.
accept it. It's irrelevant.
Doesn't
It's
matter.
already here. It's already here.
Yeah.
Like you're not
Yeah.
gonna make it disappear.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. If there's an appearance of non-acceptance, it's that. Also, it's just
Yeah.
seamlessly that. You're never out of sync. You're never out of phase. There's nothing that could be out of phase. And I think that's why it really comes down to an exploration of identity ultimately. That there to see so clearly there is nothing that could be out of phase. There's nothing that could be out of flux. There's nothing that can stand apart and turn anything into an object. Um, and then you see like there's no thing. There's no actual thing. Thingness isn't a thing. It's just appearance that's so intimate that it's indescribable. Um, and yet undeniable. And it is that really paradoxical dynamic stillness. I liked how you said, I think you actually said that dynamic stillness. It is dynamic stillness.
The piece that the first time I heard you use the word immediacy, it struck. It was like lightning.
Mm,
that that's the thing. Whatever it is that seems to be just demonstrating, expressing, appearing, that's it. And that's
mm,
all there is. There is no comparison to what seemed to be there before.
mhm,
So if you're in
mhm.
like deep samadhi and resistance arises, there is no samadhi. So then
Yes.
is this even resistance? How could it be resistance? It's not being contrasted to anything.
Yeah.
What else is there?
Mm,
When you said that, it was just so clear. I'm like, that's the word. It's just a great, it encapsulates the whole, it's immediacy. It's
mm,
immediacy.
mm,
There's this weird intuition that came up. The broads and the narrows. It seems like
mm.
a dualistic experience, but it seems like we start to kind of, very human pointing here, but we cultivate the soil, and that's all we can do. We just cultivate. That's the engagement. That's the diligence, or the what do you call it? The you got to want this, or I'm not sure how you put it, but
Intention, maybe.
that's the piece, right? And then the narrows is the immediacy, the broads and the narrows, and we
Mm,
find, oh, it's all the same.
yeah.
That's another joke. That's a lot of laughter comes out too.
Yeah.
Contrast. What's that?
Yeah, it really is. You can also approach this just by looking at the mechanism of mind and the mechanism of like the logic of thought to the mind. And I have nothing against logic. Logic is very powerful when it comes to relative beliefs and evaluation of data and all that. It's like super valuable. But when we're talking about what we're talking about, it is not that kind of thing. So when you apply like the first step of what the mind tries to do to this, it's going to go, okay, is it this or this? It's always or. Oh, it must be this or that. No, no, no.
Yeah, yeah.
Can
They
you
say
live without or? Can you live without or?
should. That's a good one. Should.
Right. Yeah.
What?
Should is a really, really weird word. It's
But it
gotten really weird when I hear people say it now. I'm like,
literally logic transcends because should
yeah,
doesn't actually make no sense. It makes no
right.
sense.
Yeah. It's like saying that should not be that should not be a hand. Or it's like Like I don't want that to be a hand or something. It's that weird. It's like,
What?
okay. I
I,
don't know what to do with that, but
I,
okay.
this is it.
Yeah, shouldn't and should, or yeah. They really are garbage words, and they're totally delusional.
So strange. Even
Yeah.
it's like, what? I mean, it really doesn't hit anymore.
Mhm.
Maybe it never did.
Yeah.
That experience shows up too. Even in telling story, it feels like it's made up. Oh,
Hmm.
let me tell you the story of what happened. Okay,
Yeah.
doesn't feel like there's no substance at all to that.
Hmm.
There's nothing there.
Yeah. It is one thing that goes with this. Like some things, some faculties I think get not as good and go away or go away with this. And to be honest, I say this to people like one of them is spatial reasoning for me got worse. Like I used to have such a spatial reasoning. I could almost imagine everything in my head and dimensions and what room I'm in and where this is and that. It was like I was actually thinking about that all the time in a way. Like
Mhm.
that's more challenging for me now. I can do it, but it's more challenging and it's not just always there. Um, Following stories, even like for entertainment, is much harder now. If it's a really good movie or series, I can still follow it, but it's very hard for me now. It's just like I don't care. They don't care about that story. It's like, what do I care? I don't care about this story. Like I don't care about my own fucking story. So why would I care about your story or that story or some story someone made up that's not even well written, you know? So it does, yeah, it can kind of ruin entertainment to some degree. It doesn't ruin it, but it'll change what entertains you. That's for sure. Yeah, that's another. And time gets all fucked up.
I hear this a lot actually, that people are no longer interested in watching things as much. Um, probably because that was used as a tool of checking out. That's all.
Mhm. Yeah,
You never actually appreciated the story anyway. They just kept you
probably
busy.
true. Yeah,
Kept you
yeah,
busy.
yeah,
Anything but
yeah,
this. Okay.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and other things that have gotten really interesting for me is like when I get on an airplane now, it's like, okay, everyone's like, hustle and bustle, getting in, putting your stuff up and all this. And as soon as everyone like sits and puts their seatbelts on and stuff or whatever, immediately everyone does something. They either pull out a book or a phone, and we all know this, but if you look around, it's like almost no one on the entire plane is not doing that. Like literally everybody is doing it. And it's like what I see is like all these little hungry minds are like, oh my God, I gotta have something to eat. I haven't read something or engaged my mind. I've been doing all this like, physical activity for the last 15 minutes walking around. I haven't looked at my phone since I stood in line and got on the plane and put my bag up. I gotta get back on it. I gotta read. I gotta engage my mind and hear a story in my head. And like it's amazing how addicted we are to content that actually revs up the mind, revs up the thinking, It's a massive addiction.
I think we can actually describe that as thought withdrawal. I think there actually is a physical uncomfortable sensation with not
Mhm.
being in that mess. I mean, there's some people I work with that like describe physical sensations that sound a lot like withdrawal.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and I think I think that's literally sort of repressed energy, so to speak. Like we can
Of
be
course.
so solid in thought that we're just without realizing it's not like we're doing this on purpose. It's a sort of side effect maybe, or just a habituated response over who knows eons of humans doing this. But we push down things somehow. We somehow do make this like illusory body mind split, and we stay so much in the mind. And then sometimes we use substances to stay even more numb in the mind and our body, like you know the classic thing in like emergency departments is if you have someone who's like an alcoholic, raging alcoholic, they may be having a heart attack and they don't even feel it. Like, they may have had a heart attack and didn't even know it because they're so numb to what their body's actually experiencing.
Mm,
But just mind identification itself can do that. Like it can get you pretty numb up there.
no
So
doubt.
so when you start to break the spell, yeah, all these lost children are like, hey, I need attention. They're gonna come and it's gonna be uncomfortable for a while or whatever. It's gonna be different for a while for sure.
Mm.
And that's okay. Like it's okay. They're gonna come for a while. They may come for a good while.
That
So it's
particular that particular place, the darker before the dawn piece is
yeah,
it feels like untenable for a lot of people. They're like, no, no, thanks.
yeah.
It's like, no, you got this actually. It actually you might start to notice that there's sensations in there that feel really nice.
That's right. Yep. Yep. Like when nailing on the roof starts to feel orgasmic, for instance.
Man,
Yeah.
that whole thing, oh, that
Yeah.
was amazing. That was amazing. And I'm like, how could anybody regard this as uncomfortable?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was like
I was doing that's so cool.
pressure waves.
I was doing something yesterday that like in the past I would have been like, I don't know if I would have dreaded it, but it would just like I would overlook the details of it or something. I was like filling out checks, writing checks, signing my name. And I was like, wow, I was like signing it really slow. I could feel the pen moving across the paper. It's like
You can actually feel the ball.
watching the ink. You feel it rolling. I could, yeah, see the ink laying out as I'm going and feeling the way my hand moves this way and that way and how much my fingers touching the paper and how much isn't. And I was feeling my breath and my feet on the floor. And I'm like, this is just so fun, you know? Like I used to just not like stuff like this, like paying bills, you know? It's just, but if you look close enough, everything is really, really magical.
I'm
If you
so
look close
excited
enough and yeah,
you enjoyed that. So then I know the check is in the mail.
you know it.
You just wrote so many
Yeah.
checks.
Josh. For whole filling. All right.
Beautiful. Well, this has been quite an adventure, my friend.
We've been all over the place. Yeah.
It's like this.
Yeah. What needs to be said is said.
Yeah.
And that's how it goes.
And it like doesn't even matter.
No, definitely doesn't matter.
Like when people are like, stay on track, I'm like, what is that?
What do you mean? Yeah. You know, another one that comes up for me sometimes, less now because I haven't done it mostly out of just time constraints, but when I have like backgrounds moving and sound, some people it drives them nuts. They're like, I
Hmm.
can't hear what you're saying because of the sound. They get so triggered. I'm like, then listen to the sound.
Hmm.
Who cares what I'm saying? Listen to the sound. It's
Words are
trying to take you,
That's right.
you know? Yeah. Yeah. It's
I mean,
purposeful.
I remind people you just watch it on mute and just experience that way.
Hmm.
Mix it up.
Yeah.
Put it in super slow mo. You know how you can
Hmm.
modify those things on YouTube, or
Yeah.
go really see what it's like when it's really fast. I mean, just
Right.
mix it up. Don't get
We
hung up
probably
on
sound like we're on 1.5 already anyway, because we both talk fast.
word. Slow us down.
Oh my God. Love it. Did you ever watch? I don't know if you know if you watched many of my videos or anything, but I did an interview with Zubin one time and I interviewed him about his awakening. The interview is called A Billionaire, a Doctor, and a Sorceress Walk into a Closet.
Yeah.
I just watched just the if anyone wants to watch this, like I think it starts at like 1 hour and 4 minutes or something. The story of that happening, I mean, it's literally what happened. They go into this closet and when one of them comes out changed forever. And I laughed so hard just watching it again. He's so funny and it's such a great story. So yeah. Anyway.
One of them says, "What is this, a joke?"
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
doesn't it sound
Yeah,
like a
exactly.
setup for a joke?
Totally. Totally. Yeah. Man. All right, my friend. I guess we'll see you Saturday for the premiere and
Yeah, that's
yeah,
gonna be great.
we'll do it up. Yeah. We're gonna have so we're gonna have a we're gonna have poached milk toast. We're gonna have fried milk toast. We're gonna have milk toast charcuterie. Yeah. So and yep, and we're gonna do like I think I'm gonna have milk toast shish kebabs.
Toast kebabs.
Yeah.
You know, while we were talking about that, I just jumped on Google and there actually are a ridiculous amount of recipes for milk toast.
I'm sure there are.
I
Yeah.
actually didn't know it was a real thing. I thought we were just kind of making it up.
Yeah. I was laughing. I was actually laughing really hard this morning looking at those texts about milk toast.
Oh, well, for your benefit, I'm definitely going to go down and ask Laura about what kind of recipes for milk toast we can whip together.
Yeah. Well, tell her I want to do try to be as serious as you can. Tell her I'm making
Just like
milk toast. I
this.
just want to know, does she like it? Yeah. It's like, oh God. Oh. It's like trying to wash it off yourself, you know? Um, yeah, see if she likes it. I suspect she likes it medium rare, but I can cook it at any different temperature. Just don't say well done. I just won't do it.
Oh my God.
All right.
So good.
Cool, man.
All right, yeah, and I'll just shoot this over to you.
Sounds good. Yeah. I'll fire it up and then you can fire it up and then
Fire it
we'll
up.
do it again sometime.
Fire it up.
Right on, man. All right. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.